Welcome to the afternoon constitutional. Those images you just saw were captured earlier today at our southern border by the folks from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, who are live at the southern border as the Title 42 is getting ready to expire, and they're ready to join us with a live report from the front of this crisis coming up there. Of course, our program, the Afternoon Constitutional, brought to you by our friends at the Government Accountability and Oversight Group, govoversight.org. Please support what we do there. I notice my inbox has been very full. The first quarter must have just ended, so a lot of fundraising emails going out. We go to work and actually put together things for you at govoversight.org so that we can shine light on what's going on. Joining us now, Communications Director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. There he is at the border. He is Ira Mehlman. Ira, thank you so much for joining us. Where exactly are you at the border? It seems like the same encampment. We just saw that video from where people were crossing.
Yeah, this is one of the two main crossing points. This is gate 42 that you can see. The gate, the wall has been built here. About miles down the road that way, there's gate 40. There's another group of migrants waiting to come across. We were able to fly a drone up here just a little while ago before they told us we couldn't. There is a line of people probably about a quarter of a mile deep heading down there. About a quarter of a mile deep come across. The Border Patrol seems to be preparing to let them in. They want to get them in before Title 42 because that way anybody that they want to send back, they can send back more efficiently. But the buses and vans haven't shown up yet, so we're still waiting.
So Ira, what exactly is this staging area for? You said that so they come in here, and this is where the Border Patrol, will actually sort through them, find out who's applying for asylum, and start the process there. Is that what this camp is?
This, you can see over there, there's a gate marked number 42. That's where they come through. They're going to open that gate whenever the buses show up to transport the people. We just saw some Border Patrol officers go through there. They're probably starting the process right now in anticipation of the buses and vans showing up. But the other night we were here, there were several hundred people that came through. We came back yesterday morning. There was another large group that came through, people getting on the buses, going to, I guess, some processing center before they're released. So the vast majority of them are just being given notices to appear. If you go to downtown El Paso, where we spent a lot of time, you have all the people who have been released, but haven't arranged transportation to wherever it is they want to go in the country. So they go from here to the border processing center, to a church downtown, and then they go to the United States.
And this seems like it's all very organized there, but it also seems like it's organized chaos there. Where are so many of these people coming from that are waiting on the other side of that gate 42 and all the other gates, Ira? Are they all from South and Central America, or are they from a lot of other countries?
Most of them appear to be coming from Central and South America. A lot of the people we spoke to, there's a church in downtown El Paso where a lot of the people are camping out, on the street around that church. Most of the people we spoke to came from Venezuela. I would say this is organized capitulation. They are opening the gate. These people they're ineligible to come into the United States. But in a little while, the Border Patrol is going to be opening that gate and they're going to come in anyway.
Is there any idea, Ira Mehlman from the Federation for American Immigration Reform is on with us. Is there any idea what the return rate is on some of these folks, or have the hearing dates been so far into the future because we're so short of courtrooms to adjudicate their asylum hearings? Do we have any grasp as to how many of these folks actually show up for their hearings?
Well, since we've had this great rush of people coming in since the Biden administration, most of them probably still haven't had their hearing dates. The dockets are so backed up that the people coming in now they're given what's called notices to appear, that they have to appear at a courtroom to press their case for political asylum. They're probably going to see the inside of a courtroom sometime in the 2030s.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, at that point they will have been here so long. Even if they do show up, even if their claim is denied, they're most likely going to remain anyway. And that's really the strategy here of this administration. They want to establish facts on the ground. They know that once people are here, and once they've stayed for a while, the chances of them ever being removed are slim to none. And that really is the objective of this administration. This isn't happening by accident. This is a deliberate policy on their part. They want to open up that border. Uh, what they want to do is avoid the bad optics. So the people that they're letting in, they're letting in an organized way. It doesn't have quite the value of people huddled on the banks of the Rio Grande. Nevertheless, these are people who have no legal reason to be in the United States and are being admitted because this is the policy of the administration.
So Ira, then, and I know that your colleague Ron Kovac was talking to me on my radio show this morning about not Title 42. That's obviously the theme of everything we're talking about. But
Title 8.
Title 8 and the idea of actually enforcing and passing some form of e-verify, which would then at least be some toolkit that the government, after this mess is over, start to find these folks as businesses might start to try to employ them. What is the idea of perhaps using e-verify as a way to, once this mess is over, to start trying to find these folks?
Well, first of all, I think we're talking about two different things here. Title 8 is the code of law under which people are normally removed from the country. The problem is that it takes so long that it probably not even be able to hold people long enough to be able to put them under Title 8 deportation. And again, even if they are once they get into the deportation process, it's also years and years before they ever leave, and nobody's going to force them to leave anyway. What you're talking about also is a bill that the House of Representatives is working on today. They're probably taking a vote sometime this afternoon. It's called H.R. 2, which is the Secure the Border Act. That includes a lot of provisions. It would reinstate a lot of the policies that were working very, very effectively before President Biden came to office. It would also, I believe that there's some back and forth now about whether E-Verify is going to be part of it. You have some very pro-business Republicans who don't want it in there. It's going to be a fight. But, best case scenario, it gets in there. At least we have some mechanism that prevents people from trying to work in the United States. But, clearly, this administration is not keen on enforcing the laws. If you've heard Mayorkas talk over the past few days, he keeps blaming it on Congress, that Congress refuses to do what they want them to do. But the fact of the matter is, he and the president are responsible. They're legally obligated to carry out the laws that exist now, and they're refusing to do so.
Yeah, and my fault for mixing up the two agendas, because I was trying to get to the E-Verify, and we're actually going to visit with Virginia's 5th District Congressman Bob Good, who has been to the border many times after this chat, so we'll get an update on H.R. 2 in that. And I know that even in Florida, where they tried to do a statewide version of E-Verify, as you said, Chamber of Commerce Republicans got in the way of it. I think the rhetoric was, you're going to make our business owners the criminals, which, if I'm not mistaken, if you're employing somebody who's not a citizen, that's what you would be. Is that the demagoguery that's caught us all up in this? Is that we're missing the point, Ira Mehlman, at the border, that there is a crime going on here and that there are people being exploited in it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the exploitation is running rampant. What we're seeing now with all the unaccompanied children is, they owe the cartels that smuggle them here a lot of money. And the cartels are not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They are making sure they get paid by having these kids go to work, very often in dangerous jobs. I mean, it's gotten so bad that even the New York Times and the Washington Post have done exposés on this. So it is just horrific what is going on as a result of this. These people claim to care about the migrants. They claim to care about the children. You heard them complaining about breaking up families in the previous administration. This is infinitely worse. You've got kids being put to work in hard labor. Those are the ones kids who are being trafficked by the sex traffickers. It is just horrific what is going on. It's not only turning a blind eye, these are facilitating it.
Well, and that's one of the things that, as here in our flagship of Charlottesville, we hear an awful lot about slavery and slavery that happened 150 years ago. But Ira, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're talking about here is the rebirth of a whole new modern government authorized, government allowed kind of slavery.
Right. It is 21st century slavery. These kids are going to be working for a long, long time. I don't. The kids don't have kind of take them a long time to pay to work. I assume that they're charging interest on this. So we're going to have people who are coming here believing that they were going to enjoy a better life, finding themselves in basically indentured servitude, and that's simply unacceptable.
Well, and it may be a better life than what they had in the first place, and certainly fleeing abject poverty is understandable, but that's not the same thing as truly seeking asylum from a country where you would be in grave danger, Ira. Am I wrong about the way I'm characterizing that?
Yeah, yeah, and they're not seeking asylum because they're in grave danger. Most of the people who are coming because they want better economic opportunity, and that's understandable also.
Hmm.
But economic migrants are not eligible for relief under our asylum laws. You need to demonstrate that you are being persecuted by your government for specific reasons. And most of these people, the vast majority, are not. Even under this administration, which probably has a laxer standard, something close to 90% of the cases are being denied. But the fact is, even when they're denied, the people aren't leaving because Mayorkas refuses to deport anybody except, the most violent of criminals.
So, so you brought up the criminal element in this, and we see just Tuesday of this week was Fentanyl Awareness Day, and here we are 2 days later, basically opening up the border to so much more of this, and even with the lax standards, we're seeing hundreds of thousands of pounds of poison coming across the border. Ira, talk about that angle of it. And you mentioned the MS-13 gangs that in some cases hold lots of loan money over these people's heads. In some cases, I've been told, they also hold family members back home to make sure that these folks not only get across the border and do what they're told to do, but continue to once they find their MS-13 sponsors, to use the old immigration phrase, here in places like Charlottesville, Virginia.
Right. I mean, what you're seeing here, you all around us, there are Border Patrol agents standing around waiting for several hundred migrants to come through that gate there. In the meantime, that means the rest of the border is wide open. And that's the strategy of the cartels. They send people across the border. They tie up the manpower here. Meanwhile, a few miles down the road, they may be bringing in fentanyl and all kinds of here.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we are also enriching our biggest global adversary, the Chinese. The chemicals that go into fentanyl begin in China.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese ship it across the Pacific to Mexico, where it's pressed into pills, and then it's brought across the border. Very often, it is the migrants. The migrants serve as a decoy. They tie up the Border Patrol's resources, while the fentanyl that is killing 100,000 or more Americans every single year, that gets through without any problem.
I read a scholarly piece just earlier this week, Ira, that talked about the weaponization of migration, and that this is tactical. This is Cloward and Piven writ large, designed to destroy, designed to create such chaos that conservatives will be fine with deploying the U.S. military inside the borders of the United States. And I've floated this story, and sure enough, my inbox started to fill up with people saying, damn it, Joe, I don't care, just secure the border. And we're starting to get herded, I think, into a place where we're going to have the U.S. military ignoring, if not just tearing up Paso Comitatus, and will become ostensibly the national police force. Is some feeling about that in your circles at the Federation for American Immigration Reform, that this was a tactical strike, to break our country from its constitutional roots?
the Biden administration has some kind of agenda. As I said, this is not by accident. This is a deliberate policy. And the president has called up 15,000 troops to assist. And we heard the other night, and there were military troops here. They weren't here to guard the border. They were not here to prevent or deter from breaking our laws. They were here in a backup role. They were helping the Border Patrol get people into vans, move them away from the border. So, if the military were actually doing something to protect the security of this country, to protect our border, that would be one thing. But now they're being used simply as backup for, the paper pushing that needs to happen when you allow lots of people to come into the country illegally. So, if there's some larger agenda about having the military deployed within the United States, I don't know about that. But I do know what I saw the other night, which is that the military was here and their job was to help the Border Patrol get these people through the system and released.
What about the people? You're in El Paso or near El Paso, Texas, right now, Ira. Is there fear? Is there danger? I mean, we've seen pictures. I've seen pictures of encampments. I'm sure you've seen them firsthand there, of people just living on the streets. What about the people right there on the border? What are they saying? We've heard Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, say this has got to stop, but he doesn't seem to be having any traction. What's happening with the citizens of this area, the ones who are actually U.S. citizens?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're not pleased about having their city turned into an encampment for illegal migrants. We were over at the Sacred Heart Church, which is in downtown El Paso. That is the staging ground. It's where a lot of them wind up after they've been processed, waiting for their transportation to other parts of the country where they want to go. The streets were full. You had people sleeping on the sidewalks, sleeping in alleyways. The trash was just lining the streets. It really was an awful scene. And look, I mean, if you're a business person, a small business person in downtown El Paso, that can't be good for business. Nobody wants to come down and shop in your store if that's going on. So people in El Paso are paying a huge price. And it's all, I mean, you cannot look at the situation that these people are in, lying on the street, and not feel some empathy. But it is all the doing of the Biden administration. And they're willing to tolerate this kind of human misery. And by the way, most of the people that we saw, they were young single men. They were coming because their government. The largest we spoke to came from Venezuela. They came here because Venezuela is economically destitute. They want better opportunities here. Understand? We simply cannot allow that. Every government that fails its people to send them all here.
Well, and I've seen some video. One of the great war reporters, Yao, has been posting videos from Panama, where a lot of these camps are, I guess, a halfway house, a place where they're all sort of mustering, cleaning up, getting ready for the second part of their journey, and then they're getting on buses there and heading to the United States. This looks heavily funded. Is there any curiosity or the government officials, Mayorkas, et cetera, looking into who's funding all those buses that are bringing them to our southern border?
I'm sure he couldn't care less. Stopping this is the last thing on Mayorkas' mind. You mentioned these halfway houses in Panama. I'm not sure which side of the Darien Gap it's on, but that in itself ought to be a reason to stop this. It's among the most dangerous places in the world. It is so dangerous that they couldn't even complete the Pan American Highway. That's why people have to slog across this Darien Gap. We don't know how people have died coming through there, but we can assume that an awful lot. And it is our government that has induced people to risk their lives, to risk their children's lives, to try to do this. And for among all the reasons, this is also a reason for the administration to stop it, but they're not going to.
We hear an awful lot about how, care for women, women's health, women's health care, protecting children, all of these rhetoric, and all of this has been completely ignored at the border, as I understand from what you guys have been telling me, and what we've been seeing. I mean, the rapes, the child molestation, and then the child labor that's being brought down on these kids is something that I thought the American left used to be, very, very hardcore and adamantly against. Ira, what happened?
What happened is coming into the country. They, as a way to transform the country. I'm not sure what they have of a transformed country is. Doesn't look like one that I would really want to live in, and yet seems the way President Biden has put these radicals in charge of this policy. I can only surmise that he was not the favorite of the left wing of the Democratic Party in 2020. He had to cut some deals to get them out on Election Day to put him over the top. And this is the payoff. And he's saying that it in his time to stop this.
Well, and last one for you, Ira, and this one is kind of really much more of what the president is supposed to be doing, protecting the national security. We've seen reports about how many of these folks are on terrorist watch lists. And these are the folks that we figured out were on terrorist watch lists, but they're already gone into the country, and we can only keep our fingers crossed they somehow show up for their hearings. Talk about the national security threat that's coming through those gates behind you there at the southern border.
Right. I mentioned a little while ago that, very often the migrants themselves are decoys to tie up the Border Patrol, and that they're bringing in drugs a few miles down the road. They can also be bringing in terrorists. The terrorists have the resources to pay the smugglers to get them through without being apprehended or encountered by the Border Patrol. And that's what's really scary, is that, there is something in the order of a couple 100,000 gotaways every year. Among those, very likely are criminals and terrorists, people who have sources to elude the Border Patrol. It's probably happening right now while the Border Patrol is waiting here at Gate 42 to process all the people on the other side of the fence. A few miles down the road, the cartels are bringing in not just fentanyl and other drugs, but possibly criminals and terrorists.
So we're watching, the state level. We mentioned Florida. We have state elections coming up here. Governor Youngkin wants stricter penalties for fentanyl dealers. But can the states, we hear some of the state governors talking about calling out the National Guard in New Mexico, and Texas Governor Abbott continues to bust these people to sanctuary cities. Are there things the states can be doing, Ira, from where you said at the Federation for American Immigration Reform, to stem some of this at their level and at least put it in the laps of the places that claim to be sanctuaries for everyone being welcome?
I mean, the first thing was the sanctuary jurisdictions need in those policies. It is hypocritical to say we're a sanctuary jurisdiction and then cry when Governor Abbott or Governor DeSantis takes you up on your offer. Those policies need to end. We need for all of the states to make sure that Washington understands that this is imposing unsustainable burdens on local governments. These kids, they need education. They need care. People need places to live. We have a huge homelessness crisis in the United States. This is making it worse. The state and local governments don't have the resources. They can't raise their debt limits, all the time. They have to pay for this, and they simply don't have the resources. They need to speak up, and it needs to come from Democrats as well as Republicans. You have a few Democrats who are speaking about this, but there needs to be a louder voice within the Democratic Party, making it clear to President Biden that their support for him in the 2024 election is contingent on him stopping this.
Well, and thank you for bringing that up, Ira, because it can't be a partisan issue. I know a lot of Republican members of the House have been down to the border where you are. What is the feeling for what's going to happen at 11:59 tonight when Title 42 actually expires? Will it sort of be just a little bit crazier, or will it be existentially crazier come midnight tonight before we let you go?
We'll find out. You look, I mean, over the past couple of days, they've encountered 10,000 people a day. You know, you do the math, that's 3.65 million people over the course of a year. One of the reasons they're going to open this gate now is that they can still process and remove some of the people under Title 42. Whereas once Title 42 goes away at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, they won't have that tool. They will have to process them under Title 8, which takes way longer. They don't have they don't have the facilities. They don't have the manpower to do that. They're just going to be turning them loose. So that is actually one of the reasons why the Border Patrol is over the next hour or two going to open up that gate behind me and let people in, so they can, if they want to remove anybody, they can still do it under Title 42.
Well, Ira Mehlman, thank you so much again for taking a little time out, and I hope you guys stay safe there. It looks peaceful where you are, but I know it isn't, and I know it's dangerous, and we appreciate you and everyone at the Federation for American Immigration Reform, fairus.org, just like it says right there on the bottom of the screen. Help them out in every way you can. They're trying to make the right things happen and keep the politicians' feet to their fire. Ira, thank you, sir. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thanks, Joe.
And we've got a little bit here. We've got a couple of minutes before Congressman Bob Good is going to join us. So we've got some clips. Secretary Mayorkas spoke a little earlier, just about an hour ago, about what is coming here at the southern border. So we've got some of the clips of Secretary Mayorkas from earlier today.
If anyone arrives at our southern border after midnight tonight, they will be presumed ineligible for asylum and subject to steeper consequences for unlawful entry, including a minimum 5-year ban on reentry and potential criminal prosecution.
So you heard him talking about the 5-year ban on reentry and criminal prosecution. But again, it sounds good. And you go back to what Ira said earlier on, that this would infer that you can find folks. And I don't want to be that host that is always waving the 9/11 banner. But there's one thing we have not fixed in all of the post-constitutional we just found out Congressman Good cannot visit with us. They just moved House votes on H.R. 2 to 3:30, so he'll visit with us in the morning on the local radio show, and maybe we'll get him on Zoom so that we can share our visit with him tomorrow in this space as well. But Secretary Mayorkas is talking about increasing penalties for these folks, and as we wrap up here, then I'm going to bring up 9/11, and simply because the terrorists that hijacked the airplanes on September 11th, 2001 were all in one camp. And I'm not going after the Saudis and everything else, because, a lot of folks have been in that space. But they're a part of the story that nobody talks about, and that is the visa overstay. And even in 2001, we had an issue with people who would arrive in this country, get a visa, legally get a visa to go to school, go to work, do something, and then would just disappear. I think the kids call it ghosting. And so they would ghost, and we couldn't find them. And it would be months before anyone said, hey, does anyone know where? And I brought this up to someone once, actually at a Federation for American Immigration Reform event. And I said, is there something wrong with making somebody who holds a visa to be in this country to check in once a week? Oh, my goodness. You're treating them like a common criminal. That's what happens to parolees, Joe. We do that with the people who have served time in our prisons. These aren't prisoners. These aren't criminals. And then, they are in some cases. And we don't know where they are, because even the ones who get a visa disappear. And this becomes the problem with our immigration system, because we don't we want to be compassionate. And many people will say to people like me, well, I thought you guys believed in that Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by Creator with blah, 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 you know, the thing. Yes, we do believe that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. But I will leave you with the line from the Declaration of Independence that everyone forgets. That to ensure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the governed. So while we believe that everyone, wherever they may be, whether they're in Tehran, Beijing, Caracas, they all have inalienable human rights. They don't have a government currently that will defend them. At this point, you could make a reasonable case that neither do we anymore. But just remember that and it's on them to create the government. They have the power to create that government. It's why the Second Amendment is so important. But I digress. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. I want to say, Tucker Carlson, welcome to the internet. You're stealing our idea. He'll probably have more viewers than we do by the end of the week. But it's good to see him back, and at some point we're going to discuss with some of our technology gurus the idea of Twitter becoming a television network. It already has more users than most cable channels do, and most cable systems already have them on there, so there won't be any canceling them like they did with Mike TV and Newsmax and all of that. But anyway, until tomorrow, like I said, we'll get Congressman Bob Good on tomorrow's program. Until then, we'll keep an eye on what the votes are on H.R. 2. We'll keep an eye on what happens at the border tonight at midnight. So until tomorrow, so long, and thanks for all the fish.